My name is Marion Rogan. I'm an enterprise officer at Fulge Ireland, and I'm moderating the session this evening. So if everyone could say hello in the chat box, that'd be great, and just let us know what company you're representing. We're appreciative of you taking the time out this evening, because we know you've had probably a long day. So please use this training session to your advantage and pop any questions in the chat box, and then I will look through them, and Aisling will take the questions at the end of the session, just because it is a relatively short session. So we'll run it from now until 7 p.m. So this evening, I'm delighted to welcome Aisling McVeigh, who was our expert trainer for this evening's session. Aisling has over a decade of experience working across global brands and large-scale productions internationally. And Aisling founded Danu Collective, a boutique creative consultancy specializing in luxury brand marketing, communications, and events. So handing over to you now, Aisling.
Thank you, Marion, and welcome everybody this evening. I hope it's a very informative session in terms of how you can go about briefing your photographer or videographer to maximize the output that you get from that. So I guess before we kick into the content, we have a quick poll we'd love to do to get a sense check of where everybody's at. And the question here is, do you outsource content creation to an external agency, photographer or videographer? So obviously, yes, if you do, and no, if you have a camera or a very high quality iPhone or smartphone in-house that you would capture that content yourself. So we'd love to kind of sense check where this is at. So Anya's pulled up a box on screen there if you want to take a moment to answer with what you focus on for this piece. I don't think we've any answers in there yet. Maybe people are still deliberating. Okay, great. So 20% outsource and 80% are currently doing the content internally. Okay, great. Good to know that. And as I said, as we work through today, we'll hopefully help guide if you are looking to outsource it, or even if you're planning internally yourself. A lot of what we cover in the brief today can actually be applied internally as well, should I say. So what are we going to cover? So we're first going to look at the importance of creating compelling content. And I think the magic word here is compelling. So while we all can go around and capture content, we're trying to capture imagery and video that tells a story and that's going to motivate and inspire the consumer, which we hope then that we can convert into a paying customer. We're going to look at the content creation process and the different steps involved, how you can look at selecting the right photographer and videographer for your brand. Obviously, so many people have different styles and all of that, so we want to look at these different aspects. The importance of creating a thorough brief. So essentially, the essence of today's session is all about this part here and why it's so important, and what can happen perhaps if we don't spend the time focusing on creating that thorough brief. What to include in that. So you will get a template, a sample brief template that can be filled out and used for all of your future projects as well, should you wish. So we'll walk through that step by step and see how we would complete that. We're going to show you how you can provide creative guidance. So obviously every brand is different in terms of its personality, its tone of voice, its aesthetic, its colors, its logo, and so on. So how can you make sure that you're conveying that to the photographer, videographer that you're going to be working with so that they can bring your brand to life through the assets that they're capturing? Behind the scenes, obviously, is very, very crucial, and you all play a very important part on the day of a shoot. So we'll go through the role that you will play and some of the things that you should be looking out for. We're going to look at a sample shoot schedule and how you can put that together, perhaps what you should include and so on. And then, of course, like I mentioned, the sample brief template. So if we look at the first section, the importance of creating compelling content, well, the research tells us that it's important, and why is because it's emotionally engaging when it comes to our customers. And put yourself in the customer's shoes for this one and think about the last time you were scrolling social media, and be it a European city for Christmas markets or an activity or a beach that looks like paradise with the pina colada. What really stood out to you and stopped you in their tracks to the point that you almost mentally transported yourself to that destination and put it straight onto your bucket list? So you want to do the same. You want to emotionally engage customers by reflecting the experience. Again, always think about the story that you're trying to tell in the imagery and video and how it's reflecting the experience from the moment a guest or a visitor arrives to your business to the moment they leave. So all of the various touch points and you're capturing those. It is the strongest motivating factor, and we know that. So kind of over pricing, over value add, over everything else, compelling content is the strongest motivating factor when it comes to influencing consumer behavior. So very important stat there. And then of course, it allows us to transport the viewer to your destination. So again, really trying to help motivate and inspire from that perspective. In essence, it's visual storytelling. That's what we're trying to do. So sometimes we can often, or historically, we would have always focused on the power of the written word, copy, content in terms of writing blogs or captions for social media. And sometimes then we're just going around taking pictures to pair with us, as opposed to really thinking about what we're capturing and what story those assets are telling. So I've an example here of the Cliff House Hotel in Ardmore in Waterford. Very strong on their visuals from a brand perspective. Why? Obviously, with no words to support any of this here, just by looking at the imagery, you're getting a very strong sense of what you're going to experience as a guest there. So kind of top left, you're getting a sense of the location, this cliffside by the ocean. You're not necessarily looking out on a city, but just this lovely tranquil view of Waterford days, so to speak. You've got this lovely element of these seaweed baths. You can maybe relax or have a spa treatment while you're there. You've got lovely bedrooms. It almost looks like this is kind of a tweed rug perhaps on the bed, Irish furnishings and things like that. Even the cocktail, you can see that this looks like a curated cocktail. So I'm getting a sense that the drinks here are going to be really good. The food is definitely an elevated experience based on the picture, which indeed it actually is, because the restaurant there is a Michelin star. And then I'm getting a sense as well of the fantastic activities that I can potentially do in and around with the paddleboarding out on the ocean. So a very good sense of the experience. It's highlighting the destination beyond just the property, and of course some of the USPs that they have that set them apart from other brands as well. Have a think about the story you are trying to tell. So this is an example of Voya. Many of you will be familiar with this product, a beautiful Irish brand, and it's all based around kind of where science meets the sea. And again, without me even seeing that tagline, I get a sense of that just from the image with the seaweed and the water. In the middle, what we call is a product flat lay. So this is, for example, if you have a spa product range, perhaps you have, a food range in terms of homemade dips, homemade breads, oils, things like that people can use for cooking. And you might want to do some flat lays with those from a product, especially coming up to this time of the year where a lot of you would have branched into retail, especially in recent times, or perhaps you have gifts for Christmas as extensions of your business. So this, as I said, is what we call a product flat lay, and you can see how they bring in some of the botanicals and ingredients that are featured in the products. So without me even kind of zooming in to see what scents these are, I'm getting a sense that there's some lime, there's some orange, rosemary and thyme, and so on. And then, of course, Voya as a family business, they're all about being guardians of tradition, and that tradition being seaweed harvesting. Again, beautiful imagery that conveys that without you even seeing these words. You're getting a sense of kind of the rugged ocean, the wide Atlantic way, people out harvesting, very much kind of that handcrafted product, and an awful lot of love and care put into it, all the way from the ocean to your skin. So a lovely aspect there in showing how you tell the story of your business and the product. Try to bring the people and the experience to life. And again, a lovely example here is Kelly's Oysters, a story of 3 generations, which again, we can see we've got a father and the 2 sons, or be it a grandson here in the images. It's all about the farm to table. So again, you can see top right, you've got the oysters kind of just coming from the oyster farm. And then of course you have a finished recipe on someone's table and beautifully prepared meal. So again, what we're trying to do here is to show you how you tell the story through the imagery and try and bring the people and the experience to life. So it's not just all about photographs. While these are stills on the slides, these visuals can be conveyed through photography and videography. So you're looking at the same kind of concept that you want to be thinking about from behind both. And here we have a video that we'd like to show you. This, of course, is Dublin Zoo and their wild lights, which a lot of you will know about. But again, it's just to see how a great video is very impactful in terms of, again, trying to motivate and inspire, because that's essentially what we're trying to do through our compelling content.
Time for bed, pet.
We have to go to Wildlife now.
So again, 30 seconds didn't take much, but very quickly we were able to get a sense of what Wildlife is all about, and definitely feeling the FOMO already in terms of needing to be there when you see that young boy who's dying to go. So let's look now at the content creation process and the different steps involved. So it all begins really with identifying what content you need. And when we talk about content for the purpose of today's session, we're talking about images and video. So think about all of the marketing channels that you use to promote your business, be it Facebook, Instagram, email marketing. You will more often than not or always use an image or a video. So it's all about the process that goes into creating that content. So as I said, step one is identifying what you need, having a look to see, is there an upcoming promotion? Are we launching something new? Are we going to be running a campaign, for example, for a January sale? And do we need content around that? Perhaps there's a room refurb happening in a hotel that you want to go out to market with. Well, in order to do that, you're going to need imagery or video of the new room. If you're Dublin Zoo, for example, and you're coming into September, the kids have gone back to school, you're starting to think about how you're going to sell tickets for Wildlife. So you know that in order to do that, you're going to need very compelling content, such as the video that we've just seen, and so on. From there, you want to start researching different photographers and videographers, or perhaps content creators. When we refer to agency throughout today's session, what we really mean here is a photographer, videographer, or content creator. So not everybody's going to go to creative agency for that. You might have a photographer who you work with locally all of the time. Perhaps there's a videographer based in Ireland who you bring in for big projects. So that's what we mean in this sense when it comes to the word agency. So you're going to do a lot of research around who's in the market. Perhaps you're going to speak to colleagues to see who they've worked with in the past, who worked well, any recommendations that people have. And from there, you're going to draft a shortlist. And best practice really is to request 3 quotes. So you would go out to 3 different vendors. You would have 3 quotes so that you can really kind of do a comparison on who's coming in with the best price. I think a lot of you, if you do have a purchasing manager in your business, this is normally an ask or from finance, or indeed if it's yourself who's the owner, and of course trying to manage the marketing side as well. Best practice just to know that you're getting the best value for your money. Although that said, the cheapest does not always mean the best, but as I said, it allows you to make that proper informed comparison. And again, this is why the brief is so important, because as you get into the nitty-gritty of that, it's really going to define the final pricing. So from there, you want to look at selecting the agency. So, and we'll look in the next few slides around maybe what will encourage you to gravitate towards one over the other. You then want to brief the agency in detail ahead of your photo shoot, once you have a date and everything secured. And then after your photo shoot or your video shoot, there's quite a lengthy process in the step 5 here. And this is where it's all about managing the editing process and the delivery of the final assets. And I think we need to be very, very mindful of lead times. While all videographers and photographers will work to different lead times, kind of based on their own capacity, their own turnaround, lead times and so on. What we really want to do here is to be aware that if we are having, say, a photo shoot today, it's very unlikely that we're going to have all of the pictures tomorrow. Or if we want to go live with a new video promoting Christmas dining on Saturday, and we bring in a videographer on Wednesday, we need to manage expectations within the business that we're not going to be able to turn around that quick. So again, we should really be planning kind of a little bit further in advance, be it on an annual or biannual basis, around what those content needs are, when we need to plan the shoot, so that we have the content then in time. Normally how it works is that, give or take, within 2 weeks, you'll get a first draft. You're going to review those. If it's images, you're probably going to see a contact sheet where absolutely every picture that the photographer has taken is going to be on it. You'll start to select the ones that you like, and you'll give feedback around perhaps any edits that you need. So kind of in the touch-ups afterwards. And what might these be? There could be kind of a socket in the backdrop that you feel will be better placed, removed. It could be that there was a window that wasn't as clean as that you would like. So perhaps can the photographer do something? Perhaps there is very creased linen on a table in the restaurant, and you want to see if the photographer can do something with that. So again, they're kind of some of the edits that you might have, and then it goes back to the photographer. He cleans them up, sends them back again, and so on. So there's a bit of back and forward there. Perhaps there's internal layers of approval. Maybe the final decision maker is not yourself, and you need to kind of build in the time for those approvals before you get that final delivery of the assets. And then, of course, when it comes to video, again, you'll normally get a first draft of a video. There's lots of things like sound bites that perhaps need to go in. Perhaps there's supers, which can be words across the screen for a video, the music selection. There's all of these different things that go into the finalization of a video. So again, just being mindful and allowing for that, and being aware as well that a lot of agencies or videographers or photographers, they may limit the round of edits. So they might just limit that to 2, or perhaps others have unlimited rounds of edits. So just be mindful of that as well when you are negotiating or shortlisting certain people who you would like to work with. So in this next slide, how can you ensure that you're selecting the right agency? So there's a couple of factors here that we need to look at. The first one obviously is their availability. So you might have a specific date in mind in our industry, because there's a huge collaboration that we need to be mindful of with operations. We need to kind of maybe speak to operations first, see when may be suitable to do a shoot, be it kind of during an off-peak time, maybe before service starts in a restaurant. The last thing you want to do is bring a big, huge crew in on top of kind of a very busy evening with lots of covers. So speak to operations and see when would work kind of for your business, and then contact your shortlisted agencies and see when they or who is actually available. Obviously, those who aren't available, you're not going to be able to work with. Have a look at the desired aesthetic. So when it comes to aesthetics, you'll find that people kind of have different styles. There could be a light and airy aesthetic versus a dark and moody. For example, the picture on the slide here is definitely a dark and moody shot. Your brand might have kind of a feel that gravitates towards one or the other. You as the business owner or working within the property, kind of looking after the brand and the brand management side, you will know what that aesthetic should be. So it's trying to find the right creative who's able to kind of match their aesthetic to yours. Have a think about the type of photography or videography required. And again, we're going to look at that in the next section. Cost is a very, very important factor. Obviously, costs vary greatly depending on demand, experience, all of those different things. And if you don't have the budget, then you don't have the budget. You can rule that person out. Or obviously, if you do, then you keep those people within your kind of final shortlist. And then the turnaround times is very important. So again, like I said, commercially and from that perspective where you're trying to create content that's going to engage and sell, if it is to be timed in line with the launch of something or a seasonal campaign, you're going to need it by a certain date. And if you contact a photographer, videographer, and are open about that final deadline based on their own capacity, they may or may not have, the availability to turn around within your lead time. So again, just to be mindful of that one. I would say as well, when it comes to trying to select the right partner for yourself and your content needs, it's to be aware of the different types of creative partners. So creative partners being a photographer, videographer, indeed a content creator. So we're going to walk through them here step by step now. So a photographer normally is somebody who's obviously very experienced, and perhaps they have, they're certified, they've had professional training in this field. They would capture things like headshots, interior photography or architecture photography, lifestyle shots. So this is where we would see, for example, if it's your business, but it's featuring models and people to really bring the experience to life, and indeed the destination, this is very much a photographer. When it comes to a videographer, they're obviously capturing, life and the experience in motion. Things that they would capture would be obviously brand documentaries, event footage, weddings, drone footage from up above, product videos, and of course, when you're working with a videographer, I think it's really important to try and storyboard what you want to capture before you actually get to shoot day. So sitting down together, be it yourself with your internal team, mapping that out and getting the videographer to bring it to life. Although I think there's lots of benefits to be had by looking at this together with the videographer from the onset. So kind of you have your ideas, perhaps you do a rough sketch, and they then would support building that out, so that you can also plan production accordingly on the day in terms of building everything out. You then have what we call content creators. And any of you who follow lots of highly influential people on Instagram, you'll very often see in their bios that they refer to themselves as content creators. Essentially, what the difference is between a photographer, videographer, and a content creator is that these are not necessarily kind of trained or hold a professional qualification in the space. They're obviously quite talented in terms of capturing content. They would do an awful lot of it perhaps on their own camera or a phone, but they're very often influencers themselves. With that comes them having a large reach. So they're capturing content in their own authentic style, rather than your brand style. And then very often they will distribute that on their channel. So you're buying into their reach. So they not only create, but they distribute as well. They may be willing to capture content in lieu of a stay, in lieu of a visit or vouchers, and so on, or it could be a case of a fee as well. Some of them will have agents, some of them will represent themselves, and again, you'll see all of that in their bios on Instagram. But just to be mindful, content creators are very often influencers. They have their own style. They will capture the photography or video in that style, and they will create for you while they're, they'll go themselves, do the experience, they'll create as they go, share the images with you. But as I said, there's also scope within your agreement with them to look at a certain element of distribution. So let's look at the types of photography that there is. So there's portrait. This is kind of where people are captured themselves. You've also got kind of headshots, which is quite similar to this. There's fashion photography, sports, architecture, and food. And already, even within this set of examples, if you're looking to capture some signature dishes for a new menu that's launching in one of your bars or restaurants, you're going to look for a very different photographer, videographer, content creator versus somebody who captures fashion. It is a different style, a different look, a different story to be told, different experience. So again, it's just being mindful when you're trying to make sure that you're picking the right person for your brand, that you're aware of the different types and that you're looking at that. So if somebody recommends a sports photographer because they worked with them before, they're really good and they offer good rate, but you need hotel rooms captured that were recently refurbished, despite the person being recommended, it's not really going to be the best fit for you or your brand at this time. We've spoken about aesthetics and certain principles that make up aesthetics in photography are, of course, lighting, the composition, the subject matter, and the color schemes. And you may already be familiar with different aesthetics, but didn't know that there was a whole set of principles behind that. So when you're scrolling through Instagram again the next time, or when you're driving around and you see advertising on billboards, you're flicking through a magazine, start to take notice of the imagery that's being used, the different styles, and these aspects. So like I said, wedding photographers, for example, some shoot light and airy, have a very fine art style, and others are kind of a lot more kind of edgy, dark, moody, and so on. Color schemes, all of these kind of aspects. So again, not something to get too bogged down by, but just to be aware that videographers and photographers use different aesthetics. And then if we look at the types of videography, so what potentially could we be capturing here? It could be a brand video, a product video, documentary style again, wedding drone, or an event recap. So we've looked at these, so it's just to go over them again. We're coming into a time of the year where some of you may be having festive gatherings. You might be having a lovely get together for your team or for your corporates, and you want to create an event recap that can be shared internally by video. So again, very different type of videographer that you might have for a wedding. So again, just showing you the different examples there to help you in your search for the right partner for you. And with that, we might just take a bit of a breather and pull up another poll. And the question here is, do you have a briefing template in place that you use when reaching out to a photographer or videographer for a shoot, quote, or booking? And the answer obviously is yes or no. So I think if we go back to the first question around how many of you actually outsource this. So I think there's only 20% of you who are outsourcing to an external creative at the moment, and 80% internal. So whether you are internal or external, do you in general have a brief that you use? So we'll just hand over to you there and we'll give you a minute to answer this one. It's yes or no. Okay, Anya, should we see how we're doing there? Okay, great. So 88% are a no. So today's session is all especially for you. So hopefully you'll all be briefing in depth after this today. Why do we brief, or why do we encourage it? Obviously, there's an awful lot of benefits, some of which we'll go through on this slide. So they obviously provide clarity for everybody involved. So not just a photographer, videographer, but for yourself, for your team, for ops, for the general manager, and so on. It ensures that there's an accuracy of quotation. So we might just email a photographer, for example, and say, I need 10 pictures. Can you come for a photo shoot on Tuesday? And they've no further detail around what they're capturing. What about kind of Instagram stories versus feed versus reels, all of that content that you might need that you haven't even touched on in the 10 photo ask, but that you might start to think about, as you get closer to the shoot. So by doing a brief, you're able to properly outline, the assets that you're going to need, when you need them by, and then the photographer, videographer, content creator can properly put a quote together based on that. It allows you to guide creative direction, and you'll see as we work through the brief, there's a section where you can include a mood board, your brand guidelines, the tone of voice, perhaps there's fonts that you want to use, music styling, all of those kind of elements. So if you're able to put as much of that detail into the brief as possible, you're giving them the best chance to bring your brand to life the way you would like it. It allows you to outline deliverables. So again, what exactly do you want them to capture? So is it 5 pictures for Instagram feed? Is it 20 story templates with branding on them? Is it 5 reels? Is it a 30-second or 1-minute video for YouTube? You need to be really clear in the deliverables that you would like to see as an output from the shoot, and you would put these into the brief. So again, this is the whole point of creating this brief, so all of this laid out. You want to detail the timeline. So when we looked at the content creation process, we discussed the importance of that last step, the managing the editing and the delivery of the final asset. So you want to communicate the timelines from the onset to make sure that whoever is showing interest or coming on board is aware of when you need the stuff by, so that there's no surprises afterwards and kind of, oh, our desk is full, you're going to have to wait kind of 3 months. It allows you to maximize shoot output. So by being very clear on the deliverables, by having a sample mood board, perhaps with reference shots, so you can get straight into trying to create the look and feel based on those. And then obviously having a shoot schedule linked into your brief, you're going to get the most out of the day, because you can see who needs to be where. The next scene can be set up while you're shooting the one before, and so on. And then with all of that naturally comes efficiency. So you're driving efficiency of turnaround. Also in terms of the timelines post-shoot, it's going to be a lot more efficient, because perhaps you've laid it out, you've put dates in the photographer, videographer's diary, also in your own internal team diary for review, and so on. So we're going to start taking you through the brief, but before we do that, there is one section in it called the shoot overview. And this is really where we give as much detail as possible around what it is that we're trying to shoot and why, and where those assets might end up. So we're going to include here background information. So again, we are shooting the new cottages on the grounds of our alpaca farm because they're newly renovated, and we need images for our website, our booking engine, OTAs, and so on. And then you would kind of talk about the overall goals and objectives for the shoot. So what are you trying to achieve with this content? The type of photography and videography you're looking for. So again, having a think of whether it's fun, vibrant, corporate style, timeless, elegant, all of these different types of words in kind of what you would hope the videographer and photographer to achieve as they're capturing. Include any special requests. So again, if there's certain things that you would like them to capture, or certain equipment that you would like them to use, and so on. And then look at the criteria as well. So what criteria do they need to meet to be kind of eligible to take on the job? In terms of creating or providing creative direction, how can we do this? So I would first start by sharing brand guidelines. So this is your logo, any colors that you use, any fonts. Some of you may not have kind of a master extensive document around your brand guidelines, but if you could provide that at the very least, that's a great start. I would encourage some of you to create a mood board on Canva. So I know an awful lot of you will use Canva for your business, and it's a great tool for creating mood boards. So even just 2 or 3 slides will be a great start to be able to pass to the creative that you're working with as inspiration. Get pinning on Pinterest so you can open up a new board. Pinterest is great because you can invite people to collaborate. So you can invite team members, you can invite the photographer, videographer, the content creator, and everybody can be pinning. And what you'll see is certain things beginning to emerge through that. You then want to see if you can share any other reference imagery. So perhaps you've seen something that you really like, and not that you want to replicate, but you want to create something with a similar vibe. You would include those as well. So it could be the way a model is standing at checkout. It could be the way a couple are enjoying a romantic evening meal. It could be the way a family are kind of having a picnic on the beach after a horseback ride. So taking those reference imagery and being able to kind of use them as you go throughout the day to make sure that you're capturing the angles that you would like to capture. Always consider the target audience as you plan. And why is this? So if we consider B2B and B2C, so B2B means business to business, and that's essentially if you're targeting, tour operators, travel agents, and so on, that's very much that B2B. So the trade piece, it could be your corporate market. So you want to think about the imagery you're capturing and how it speaks to those people versus B2C, which is business to consumer. So this is where you're communicating directly to the consumer with your marketing, with these assets. So again, thinking of the consumer, what they're looking for, and how your assets are reflecting that. If we look at that in a bit more detail, your models, for example, should reflect your target segments. So if, for example, you're looking to target unconstrained adults over 45, and you are a hotel along the Greenway in Waterford, and you want to capture the couple having or enjoying the cycle along the Greenway, well, it would make sense that you choose models who are in a similar age bracket because they will appeal to that target market. Same if you're launching kind of family midterm breaks, you're going to use imagery and video that showcases the family. Backdrops and shot lists should appeal to their tastes and preferences. So again, it's not just how people look, but thinking about the target audience, what they're into, and where do we find that information? Well, it's all in the Fáilte Ireland research. We can very often find in those insights the top 10 activities that people are searching for. That in itself tells us what the customer wants. So where we can deliver on some of those, for example, if you are beside a lake where people can kayak, if you are surrounded by walks and trails or shopping, 5-star accommodation, great food experiences, food markets, and so on, the backdrop of your imagery should appeal to those, as I said. Very important that you consider the marketing channels they consume, because that's going to inform the deliverables that you need. So for example, TikTok is probably being consumed by the younger audience. You've got Instagram then, which again would have a younger audience than Facebook. So being mindful of the different channels, and then from there exploring what size image, what size videos these different channels require, so that you can add that to the shot list and make sure that you're capturing those different assets, rather than we need 1 minute video and we need 10 pictures. Nowadays, we need to look at the channels and make sure we're capturing for all of those. We then, and the last step here is required deliverables should align with selected marketing channels. So again, that just kind of wraps up what we just said, so that you have content for all of your channels for the foreseeable. There's nothing worse kind of when you come to the end of your gallery for Instagram, and it, of course, unless you start posting the same pictures again, it's very hard then to be able to go out with new content when you don't have any. One other consideration is to think about if you're appealing to just the domestic market or if it's domestic and international. Obviously, there's a slight variation in terms of tastes and preferences. The domestic market, they live and work in Ireland. It's all about kind of the keep discovering aspect, taking them off the beaten track, the hidden gems, whereas the international market may be much more inclined to kind of experience the traditional, the obvious kind of top 5 things to do in a certain place, and so on. So just be mindful of that and ensure that you're capturing content to appeal to just whoever you are targeting, or, as I said, it could be one or it could be both. Just an overview of the various channels, so you can kind of have a bit more of an idea about what we mean when we talk about the marketing channels or communication channels. There's 3 main sections, and these are earned, owned, and paid. With the owned channels being, obviously, it says it, the channels that you own and manage, and examples of those could be the website, digital screens around your premise, a blog, your email database, and so on, your social pages, of course. And then earned is anything like free publicity generated by consumers, PR, or influencers who speak about your brand or product. The examples of these could be like reviews, social shares, posts by visitors. It could be, influencers and media coming to stay and then covering reviews afterwards, and so on. And then paid, obviously, where you have budget and you place, marketing ads like radio ads, perhaps TV placements, not for everybody, or that would be our marketing budget gone for the next 10 years, and pay-per-click, remarketing, retargeting, things like paid social native ads, or indeed paid influencers. So this is just a snapshot. There's so many more channels available to you. So it's about sitting down, looking at these 3 sections, earned, owned, and paid, and make a list of all the channels available to you under each of these. And then, of course, regardless of, or, depending on what you're trying to promote, you will then kind of define which channels you're going to activate and capture the content accordingly. When we use the word deliverables, again, I know this is kind of terminology that's used in the photography, videography, shoot world, but essentially what this is what you can expect from the experience with the finished product. So the tangible product, so to speak, that you're going to have, which is the deliverable at the end of a shoot, is the image or the piece of footage. But as I said, we outline what we need based on the channels that we use. So you're going to have lots of different sizes, so they all will become the deliverables at the end. But we want to make sure that we outline those from the very onset. One way to help you identify what you need in terms of sizes and that, so you're familiar with your channels and you'd have outlined those in your brief. There's lots of kind of cheat sheets available online, and one great place is obviously Hootsuite, or indeed Sprout Social. These specs change all of the time. When I say specs, I mean kind of the dimensions and measurements that are outlined here. So currently in kind of this week, this is what the dimensions look like. So whether you're shooting for stories, a cover photo, profile photo, landscape, and so on, these are the different dimensions that you will need. So from there, you can add them into your brief based on the different deliverables that you require for the channels that you're using. So again, really important that you brief this in advance of the shoot so that the photographer, videographer know exactly what they're capturing for, because they'll have different angles, they'll shoot them different ways, they'll use different lenses based on all of these different things that you need versus just an image. Many of you may work with a web developer, or perhaps you kind of build out your websites yourself or manage the back end itself. You're probably familiar with kind of creating specific landing pages and so on. All different web pages will require different sizes of images. You can see here, for example, the difference between on the left and the right. One has a video, like a video that's loaded to YouTube and LinkedIn, whereas the other kind of has 3 square images. It's worthwhile looking through your website template and taking note of the different sizes. We've all been there where you've gotten to a page or a section and it's like, oh, I need a landscape shot and I'm all out, I don't have any left. And you end up having to put a stock shot in over all of your lovely, your gorgeous images. So have a look at that. Or if you're shooting content for a new website, speak to the web developer, have a look at the template that you've purchased in detail to see what angles and dimensions you're going to need. And again, brief the photographer, videographer accordingly. A lot of you will use email marketing. Again, they're becoming more and more visual with lots of different details in them, from circles to squares to rectangles to video. So again, whether you use MailChimp or Revenate or whatever your system is, get clear on what dimensions you can use, and make sure that you have a bank of content that's going to work for those. So again, otherwise you're just sending out email marketing and you're struggling to find the images to fill them. Here we have a sample shoot schedule. So I strongly encourage you all to put a sample or to put a shoot schedule together and to add this into your brief. You can not only use the brief for the photographer, videographer, or content creator, but you can always circulate this internally a few days beforehand so that everybody knows exactly what's happening, what time and where there's a collaboration involved, for example, with food and drink, and they need to kind of produce and serve cocktails at a certain time so that they're being shot as soon as they're kind of poured, which is really ideally what you want to be doing for food and beverage photography. But this shoot schedule will allow them to see when and where they need to be with their products. Same if there's certain areas that you want to shoot, for example, the spa, and we have here the couples treatment room. By sending around a shoot schedule, the spa team knows they need to block off the treatment room at this time, and that they need to have certain things laid out, like the candles, lighting, spa products. They need to have clean branded towels, robes, and 2 slippers. If you don't have a shoot schedule and you don't have this level of detail, what can happen is you arrive to the spa to shoot. It needs to be cleaned down from the previous client, should I say. There's no slippers or robes, so your models are there waiting. It takes 20 minutes to find the slippers and the robes. You eventually get them, get the shots, and you've lost 20 minutes of that time allocated for this scene, and it starts to eat into the rest of the day. So you lose time. It's the same with kind of food and drink. If you're waiting around for chef to dish up, certain, recipes, it's eating into the time that you're paying the photographer for. So by being very clear and concise in terms of a shoot schedule, well organized, everybody's well briefed, you're constantly looking at what's next and getting set up, you're going to get a lot more out of your day. And with that, your own role on the day, let's look at that in a bit more detail. So essentially, you're responsible for the coordination of the creative team. That team is made up from, a number of different people. It's everything from the photographer and or videographer, the florist, perhaps you're using one. Again, if you're shooting around a premise and there's fresh flowers that need to be put in, there could be models, hair and makeup. There could be props being brought in. If it's a wedding shoot, maybe there's a wedding cake that a cake artist is delivering. So you're coordinating everything based on the shoot schedule so that things are landing where they need to land at the specific times. You're managing those suppliers. So again, somebody arrives, you're showing them where they need to go, decor is being loaded in and out and so on, which that all kind of, builds to form the logistics. Timekeeping is crucial. So again, photographers, videographers, they can sometimes get hung up on getting, one particular shot, or perhaps they think something is worthwhile, whereas you don't really need it for your business at this time. So you need to keep a very close eye on the schedule and make sure that you're moving people on throughout the different spaces and through the different shots as the day goes. I would encourage you to prepare a trolley with props and cleaning items. I know, sounds silly, but you'll thank me. And this could be, a luggage trolley. It could be one of those kind of granny strollers that you use when you're going for groceries. But very often, if you're on a shoot, you're going to be constantly looking in the background to make sure that the floor is clean, giving it a quick sweep. Perhaps you're shooting against, there's a window or a mirror in the background that needs a wipe, surfaces need a wipe, and so on. You just want to make sure that everywhere is pristine. And then, of course, if there's props that you need, make sure that you have those with you so that you're not having to be running around, again, eating into shoot time, trying to gather props as you go. Have everything organized with you so you can move through and set things up as you go. The next point is really, really important. So shoot with and without logos. And the reason we do this, so let's take, for example, if you're shooting a whiskey tasting in a distillery and you shoot with all of the logos, that's fine because it's very important for your own business. But sometimes, certain publications or certain brands may have affiliations with certain, drinks companies that limits them from collaboration with others. Perhaps there are publications who will tell you, you know what, if you want your logo placed like that in my magazine, you're going to have to take out an ad. So it's definitely worth shooting with and without logos because it gives you, more options for where those pictures can go. Make sure you consider the cultural sensitivities in a key source market. So for example, if you're targeting the Middle East, you want to be mindful obviously of the alcohol, intake there. Sometimes it can be quite offensive to have alcohol in pictures, how you refer to alcohol, and even in terms of just having moderate dress. So again, just things to be mindful of depending on where exactly you're targeting in the world. It's important that you review shots as you go to ensure that all angles are being captured. So work very, very closely with the photographer, videographer. Stand behind the lens. Obviously, you don't want to be getting in their way while they're shooting, but between shots, do little checks to check that everything looks good. What you see through the lens can often be different to when you're kind of just observing. So have a look, check that the backdrop looks good. And again, that all those different angles that you want are being captured. Otherwise, you're moving through the spaces, you think they're being shot, and then you get your contact sheet and all of the lovely shots you hope for are just not there. So watch that. As I mentioned, keep a very close eye on the background, make sure it's tidy and clear as required. If you're shooting an open kitchen, for example, very often there'll be a lot of equipment in the background. You might want to clear that off. There could be fire extinguishers on a wall. Not saying that you need to take those off for health and safety. It's very important that they're there, but perhaps you want to tell the photographer, videographer to come in closer on the angle, or to make a note to kind of crop that out in post-production. And then we mentioned the keeping surfaces clean as well. So with that, I'm going to start taking you through and showing you the actual sample brief. So you're going to get a copy of this in the pack post-session, but it's just to walk you through how you fill it out. So obviously at the beginning, the client is going to be yourself. You're going to include contact details. Again, the idea of having so much detail on this is that this becomes obviously it's work in progress as you work through, the first contact with your photographer, videographer, building it out, confirming the shoot schedule. But, up until kind of the few days before your shoot, it's really worthwhile to have all of this information in the one place so that you can circulate it around, as I said at the beginning, to everybody in the business and everybody involved, creative team and so on, so that everybody's clear. And say, for example, that a model is running late or a makeup artist is stuck at one of those train track bridges and is going to be late by 15 minutes, that your details are here and they can call you straight away. So client, your point of contact, the shoot date and time. So again, when you're reaching out to a photographer, videographer from the onset, they need to know roughly what the dates are and whether it's going to be 1 day, 2 day, 3 days. They can't quote without that information. Include the shoot location. So again, at this point, it doesn't need to be every single kind of scene or backdrop, but at least it does need to be kind of whether it's your business, what county, and so on. Again, so they can account for the time, the travel expenses. We've spoken through the overview and what you should include here. So kind of all about what you're aiming to shoot and why, your marketing goals and objectives. And then as we work through, there's the target audience section. So again, it's really important that the photographer, videographer is aware of this. Again, they perhaps, might be sourcing your models for you and they can do that accordingly. List your marketing channels. So they are obviously very experienced in this, and they may see opportunities for certain content based on the channels that you want to leverage versus perhaps what you think you need. So outline those channels. It's very important that they know what they're shooting for in terms of that, and then deliverables based on that. So again, that's where we saw this sheet, the cheat sheet. So if it's Facebook, do you need kind of 10 images that you can post on Facebook? Do you need a reel for Instagram? Do you need a video for TikTok? As I said, they all have different dimensions based on the channel. Same with your website. So outline all of these very, very clearly in this deliverables section. You want to outline the deadline. So the final deadline by which you need everything signed off by. But before that, and it's very often worthwhile noting is when you would like to you receive the first draft of the first set of images by, how long it's going to take you to feedback on that round. After that, when you want to see the revised version again, when you would expect to feedback. So you can absolutely outline that, timeline based on when you need things by, or team availability. And then of course, the final delivery deadline is very, very important. So for example, if it's a Christmas campaign, getting assets in January is no good to you. You're only going to be able to use them next year. So outline all of those things. Creative team. So list everybody here who's taking part. So again, models, hair, makeup, artists, stylists, anybody like that, so that people obviously have an idea. And that again, people can be contacted if needs be it on the day or in advance for planning. There's a section here for a mood board and reference material. So we kind of looked at that in how to provide creative guidance. So you could link to your Canva mood board here, your Pinterest page, screenshot in any reference shots to give them a good idea. Link all of your brand guidelines. Again, don't be bogged down by this if you don't have a big brand book. If you have a logo, fonts, and a certain Pantone for the color that you use, that's plenty to be able to input into this section. But do make sure to talk about the personality of your brand and if there's any particular tone of voice that you use. And then the shoot schedule we've gone through. So outline your shoot schedule here, populate it all in. And this is probably one of the final steps that happens in the brief. When you first reach out to somebody, you can just put this as TBC, but definitely you want to circulate this at least 2 days before shoot day so that everybody's aware of what's happening and when. When you get the presentation post today's session, you'll be able to download that editable brief here in this section, or perhaps it might be emailed to you directly as well. So just keep an eye out for those. And then for anybody who's looking perhaps to find out a little bit more about the whole content creation process, today's session was all about briefing and making sure you capture a good brief to maximize your shoot output. But if you want to find out, as I said, a bit more about the whole holistic approach to creating compelling content, there's 2 fantastic trainings here on the Fáilte Ireland Supports Hub. One is obviously a video around capturing images that engage in cells. And then the other one is capturing video that engages in cells. So 2 great trainings there that you might want to perhaps watch yourself or share with your team, whoever's looking after social media. And that really brings us kind of to the end of the content before I hand back to Marion to give you some kind of insights around what's next. So obviously today's a power session. It's 1 hour. I know there's an awful lot of information in it, but what would we really like you to take away and what can you kind of start to implement from tomorrow? So step 1 really is to download that briefing template. Research photographers and videographers who fit with your brand. So you can be doing this all of the time, whether you're scrolling on Instagram or whatever it is, always keep an eye out and start to build that list. Review people's pricing and tier accordingly. So obviously you know what your budgets are like and who you can and can't perhaps invest in. Try and look ahead. So we're coming into a new year, 2023. A lot of you will be planning your campaigns, what's happening when. Try and see what type of content you're going to need based around your marketing roadmap for next year. Get very clear on your target audience so you can list the channels that you're going to use for those campaigns. And from there, you can obviously outline your deliverables. Draft a brief for each. So for all of the shoots that you foresee for next year, we would encourage you to use the template and today's slides to draft a brief and issue it for tender. So kind of going out for those 3 quotes. There's often economies of scale to be got where you plan annually. So perhaps as a photographer who you could book for a couple of shoots throughout the year and you're going to get a better rate as opposed to just booking 1. You're obviously all on the calls today. Many of you will have teams that you work with. Try and start to educate them about the importance of the proper briefing process. You're going to get so much more for your investment. You're going to get so much more out of your shoot if you do it that way. And then, of course, we'd love for you to start implementing the template and monitoring the stats in terms of what you're capturing versus perhaps historically. So with that, a huge thank you from myself, and I'm going to pass you back to Marion to take you through what's coming next.